I need to say thank you on behalf of the Sting and Fly to the Arts Council, the T.S. Eliot Foundation, to Declan, who facilitates everything we do, and to the readers who are here today. I'll introduce them. We'll have 4 readings. First up is Rebecca Ivory. Just to say one kind of word, we've been kind of running a mentoring scheme for a couple of years in terms of fiction, and it was kind of maybe an informal thing, and it's becoming formalised. But Rebecca and Eamon are two, Eamon McGuinness, who's going to read second, are two really exciting writers who came through this scheme. So we're just really glad that new writers are coming to us with their brilliant work, and we're really proud that we've kind of that it's coming this way. Rebecca particularly had a really tricky task, so I don't want to take any credit for Tom Morris' idea, but Tom, you can throw your hand up there so people can see you. Tom is the editor-at-large of the Sting and Fly, and had the notion that we might ask writers to write a story in a single night. So they would be given a prompt at dusk. That was my insistence. At dusk, and they would have to deliver the story by dawn. And Rebecca bravely volunteered to do so. And the results are absolutely amazing. The results in all 4 stories are amazing. You can read more about it on page 15 of the magazine, which is for sale downstairs in the actual fair. So on the tables in the fair. So I'll introduce Rebecca. Rebecca Ivory lives in Dublin and writes short fiction. Her stories have appeared in the Sting and Fly, in Banshee, in the Tangerine and Fallow Media.
I don't hear anything for 3 days, and then on Tuesday night, at the end of my shift at the restaurant, Dan leaves me 2 WhatsApp voice notes. One is 4.5 minutes long, and the next is a little over 2 minutes. He also sends 3 messages on Instagram, 2 reductress headlines, and a meme about old people on Facebook. It's almost midnight for me, so 7 in the evening for him. I play his voice note while cycling home. I've had a truly awful day, he begins. He's been living in New York for 7 months and now uses truly an unnatural amount in conversation. I think he's picked this up from his American friends. But who am I to talk? Until recently I was certain that amant was a real word, and I often say pacifically instead of specifically. Anyway, I am too critical of people who adopt the accent of the country that they're temporarily living in, as if it isn't normal or healthy for people to change depending on who they spend time with. I start the voice note from the beginning because I wasn't actually listening. My mind had wandered. I've had a truly awful day. This morning I was on the train and a couple started a flash mob. Actually, maybe it wasn't a flash mob. There was only the 2 of them, swinging around the poles and twirling through the carriage. Anyway, they caused this huge distraction, and everyone was clapping and cheering, and I just wanted to listen to Picture of You by Boyzone, but I couldn't hear it over the commotion. Then I started to think, how great would it be if I could dance and these people clapped for me? So then I had this fantasy about me competing in one of those Strictly Come Dancing charity shows. You know, the ones that local GAA clubs organise as their annual fundraiser. And that's a pathetic ambition, but I'm too old to ever be a real dancer, so I have to adjust my fantasies to meet my current potential. Because what's the point in a fantasy if there's no point it'll ever materialise? I let out a sloppy laugh which must seem unbidden to the young couple I cycle past in the dark. I feel bad, I don't have a bike light, and I'm sure that's annoying for drivers and pedestrians. My boyfriend James thinks I replaced my broken light weeks ago, but I keep forgetting, and it's a weird lie I keep telling because I'm embarrassed that I can't reliably complete simple tasks. There are still several minutes of Dan's voice note left. Also, I met Pete on my lunch break, and I don't know what's going on there. I told him how upset I was that he ignored me for a week, and I couldn't be with someone who thought that was acceptable behaviour. Of course, I didn't expect him to agree. He said he didn't think we should keep seeing each other because he didn't want to hurt me because he cared about me. Obviously, I started to backtrack then because I was only trying to scare him, and the last thing I wanted was for him to call my bluff. And he was so sad, saying he felt really good about us, and I felt like I'd made a huge mistake. I was almost crying on my way back to the office. But listen, an hour later he texted to say he didn't think he could stop seeing me and invited me to his apartment tonight. So honestly, I'd say he's full of shit, but I'm still really attracted to him, so I probably will have sex with him later. In the second voice note, he says he got a new job. He doesn't say exactly what it is, but it must be decent if he quit his job as a studio assistant at Pushcart. In the final minute of his message, he says that he'll have 2 weeks off before he starts, and he's decided to visit home this weekend. I stop listening and start recording the reply. How long exactly are you home for, and how much time will we get together? I still have a bell on my bike, and I ring it 3, 4, 5 times in excitement, and stand up to pedal faster, because as well as missing a light, my bike only has 1 gear. James is still up when I get home. Dan and I moved into this house when we started an NCD together 7 years ago. After Dan left, James moved in with me. The house belongs to Dan's great aunt. She lives in a nursing home. We pay a tiny amount of rent to Dan's father, and in return we have to preserve the decor, which includes a lot of framed Sacred Hearts and images of baby Christ and tiny mounted figures depicting his waxy, flushed face and thick lashes as he hangs on the cross, dying. I love it because I'm in the middle of a master's in fine art, and I find these knickknacks an endless source of inspiration for my projects. It's no different to collecting vintage teacups, but James doesn't like it. He's Protestant, although he says it's nothing to do with that. He's asthmatic, and these items gather a lot of dust. James is watching The Sopranos when I get home. He abruptly turns off the TV because he's not supposed to watch ahead without me. I lean down and hug him around his neck. "Colleen, you stink of garlic mayonnaise, and it's turning my stomach," he says, shaking me off. Dan is coming home next week. I do a little can-can dance and clap my hands under my legs as it flies midair. "Next week?" James asks, trying to grab my leg. "Yeah, on Sunday night actually. I might see if he wants to stay here for a couple of nights." "Right, absolutely. It's his house. I might stay with Noel while he's here though," he says. James and Dan are wary of each other, which is nice for me. I can always complain about one of them to the other. The only time it has ever boiled over into outright animosity was at our graduation when James wore a pink velvet jacket with black silk lining. Dan asked James, in front of my parents, if he also smoked one of those novelty bubble pipes, and shortly afterwards, James slipped the cut off. I think the fact he paid nearly €300 for it made it worse for him. I sit on the kitchen counter and text Dan, "Will you stay with me next week? James won't be around." James is still talking and then saying, "Colleen, Colleen, Colleen," in a monotone voice until I shouted him to stop. Dan replies, "Offended you felt the need to ask. Obviously I will be staying with you. I live there first." James accuses me of not listening to him, and I insist that I am listening and can he just repeat that last bit.
Eamon McGuinness's fiction has appeared in The Stinging Fly and The Lonely Crowd. He has won the Michael McLaverty Wild Atlantic Words and Maria Edgeworth short story competitions, and his debut poetry collection, The Wrong Heroes, was published this year by Salmon Poetry. When this one came in, this is like when you're an editor, sometimes stuff comes in and you love it, but you think it needs loads of work. And rarely, every few years, a story comes in and almost nothing needs to be changed. This was one of those.
Pat Rattigan left Scaries at 11:50. A group of men tried to hail him at the edge of town, but he ignored them, double-checked the light on his roof sign was off, and picked up speed as he drove the coast road towards Balbriggan. The Irish Sea was quiet, the moon high and bright. He pulled into the small lay-by at the Ladies' Stairs, the sea hidden by large trees. Reversing and parking next to the bottle bank, he kept the road in his sights, then took out a yellow microfiber cloth from the glove compartment and wiped down the dash, meter and ID. He left the key in the ignition and his door ajar, and shivered when the cold air hit him before taking a deep breath through his nose. From the boot he took a cardboard box of empties, all rinsed. Vodka, beer and wine bottles, 2 jars of sauce and a small bottle of Calpol. He looked around after each drop, winced at the sound of the glass echoing in the quiet night, then put the box back in the boot. The odd car went by. Pat kept an eye on the road, checked the time on his phone and opened the back passenger door. It was 5 minutes after midnight. He walked to the base of the stairs. The gate was locked but easily hoppable, the street light beside it a harsh orange. He blinked hard and looked down the overgrown path leading to Barnagira Beach and whistled twice. He heard rustling, then a return whistle. He rushed back to the car and started the engine. A few seconds later, Mick Rattigan scuttled across the tarmac, head low. He dove into the back seat and pulled the door closed as Pat spun left out of the lay-by, taking the first right under the railway bridge. "You're a lifesaver, Pat. A fucking lifesaver." Mick reached through the front seats and grabbed Pat's left arm. "All right, Mick, all right. Lie down. I won't forget this. You're shivering. It was fucking freezing down there. There's a blanket and some food beside you. Thanks, Pat. I haven't eaten all day." Pat beeped at the bends as the road wound up towards the Black Hills, while Mick scoffed a roll and bag of King Crisps. "Which way are we going?" "Through the hills. Stay down." "Let me know where we are." Climbing now, Art Gillen coming up. Nice one. Did you manage to sleep? I drifted off but was too nervous. I got a bit of shelter in the old changing spot. Was there anyone about? A couple of people walking dogs and one swimmer, but I was well hid. I can hear your teeth chattering. I'll be grand once I warm up. I'm taking the left here at Art Gillen. Pat turned up the heat and put the foot down on the straight stretch of road as they passed the new cricket club on the right. No Elvis, Pat? Not tonight. I can't enjoy him in this mood. Fair enough. Passing St. Moby's graveyard, Pat blessed himself, reduced his speed, dropped to third gear and glanced at Mick over his left shoulder, who was lying flat on his back, his legs twisted down behind Pat's seat. They made quick eye contact before Pat refocused on the road. Passing Milverton now. We're flying. At the T-junction, Pat turned right onto the Skerries Road. How's everything at home, Mick asked. Pat looked in the rearview mirror but couldn't see any trace of Mick. Grand, given the circumstances. Has Lillian been sleeping through the night? Don't talk about Lillian, Mick. Fair enough, I was just asking. Pat ran his left hand through his thick white beard and opened his window to let in some air. Does Lorcan know about this? Mick asked. No one knows, and I plan to keep it that way. What did Butsy say? He has it sorted. I knew he was the man to ring. The ferry's at 4 from Belfast. You'll get to Carnrine at 7 and should be in Inverness by lunchtime. Amazing. He has a bed and all in the truck. I know. Pat coughed hard a few times and closed the window. They were on the road to Lusk and past the new estates on the left. He's a dodgy fucker, but he's always been a mate. Remember what he was like in his 20s. Don't, Mick. What? I'm not in the mood for remember when. We're coming into Lusk. Stay down. Anyone about? A few stragglers. I always thought Lusk was a kip. The lights at Murray's Lounge took an age. Pat kept looking from left to right, scratching his beard while they waited. Here we go. At fucking last. Many Gardaí around tonight, Pat? A few more than usual. Did you pass the house? A couple of times, yeah. And? There's tape still around the gate. Was there anyone outside? No, the place looked dead. They were out of Lusk and on the old Dublin road, passing farms and glass houses. Where are we, Pat? Nearing the turn for the estuary. I shat myself every time I heard a siren. What did you do with your phone? I fucked it in the sea after I rang you. If they trace the calls, they'll think I drowned myself. Did you call Mam? No, she wouldn't understand. If they question you, just tell them I was saying goodbye. Grand. We're getting a good run at it now, coming up to Blake's Cross. I'll miss it round here. I don't want to hear it, Mick. I appreciate what you're doing for me, Pat. I really do. I just want to get you out of this car. Pat took a left at Blake's Cross. There was a little traffic on the R132, the road dotted with factories, warehouses and garages. He opened his window and changed to 5th gear for the first time. Have you heard anything about Sarah? Mick asked after a long silence. Yeah, I was in with her earlier. Where is she? Beaumont. And? She's in a bad way, Mick. A bad fucking way. Has she talked yet? The guards are waiting for her to come around. I fucked up. You fucked up? Yeah, I fucked up. Fucked up? Fucked up, Pat screamed. All right, Pat, calm down. He slowed the car, dropped to 4th gear and looked back at Mick. Fuck off, Mick. It's barbaric what you did to that girl. Okay, it's just, don't try to explain yourself. Watch the road, Pat. A car beeped and overtook them. Pat regained his composure and looked forward again. You did that to your own daughter. What sort of fucking animal are you? Pat hopped and spat out the window. After a long silence, Mick spoke. Where are we, Pat? Turvey. Swinging left. 2 minutes. My heart's beating out of my chest. This is it for us, Mick. I'm telling you. Don't contact me again. What about Mam? Leave Mam to me. Just off the main road, Pat indicated left into a house. A man with an Alsatian on a leash was at the gate and nodded at Pat as he turned in. He brought the car to a stop and the Alsatian barked and jumped at the door. Hush now, good boy, hush. All good, Pat asked. Grand. You know where you're going? Yeah, go on so. Butsy's waiting for you. Good man. Pat started the car and moved down the long pothole driveway. We're here. Mick sprang up. There were cars on breeze blocks and the garden was full of scrap metal and pallets. Butsy's truck was parked beside the bungalow, its cab blue with Butler Transport printed on the side in black lettering. Butsy and another man appeared at the back door of the bungalow and stood under a bare bulb as Pat parked next to a jeep and trailer. Butsy had a plastic bag in one hand, and with the other was holding his Dogo Argentino on the lead. Mick was looking around frantically, his head in between the two front seats. Taking off his belt, Pat switched on the interior light and faced Mick properly for the first time. He could smell Mick's breath and noticed how filthy and unkempt he was. Do you have everything? I have fuck all, but I have it. Good, all right, let's go. I'm sorry to ask, Pat, but did you bring that money we talked about? Of course. Pat fiddled in the glove compartment and took out a wad of notes and handed it to Mick. I'll pay it back, I promise. Come on, Butsy's waiting. Mick took the notes with his left hand and with his right grabbed Pat's wrist and planted a kiss on his knuckles. Mick's nails ran along the back of Pat's hand. Pat could feel their length and looked down to see the dirt on his brother's fingers. He pulled his hand away, wiped his knuckle with the sleeve of his jacket and scratched his beard with both sets of nails. Mick stuffed the notes into his right-hand pocket and got out. Dogs were barking non-stop from behind the bungalow. Butsy called the men over and took a step towards the car. I'd say you lads could do with a strong drink, am I right? Am I glad to see you, Butsy, Mick called. Pat closed his door. Mick spat on the ground and began walking towards Butsy. Suddenly, a man appeared from the darkness on Pat's left and swung a bat cleanly and swiftly at Mick's head. He fell instantly, and the man gave one more solid strike to the back of Mick's skull. Butsy and the other man were running, and before Pat had moved, they had Mick bound and gagged and were lifting his body away. The Dogo Argentino growled at Mick before Butsy quieted it with a few strokes to the head. Pat opened the car, took out Mick's blanket and dropped it on the ground. One of the men had a grip under Mick's armpits and the other was holding his ankles, the body floppy and loose. Pat fished into Mick's pocket and retrieved his money. Go on, Butsy said to the lads. Thank you.
Our featured poet is Alicia Byrne Keane. There are 6 exquisite poems in the issue here. Alicia holds a BA in English Literature and French from Trinity College Dublin and a Master's from Oxford University. And the bio note here says, is finishing an IRC funded PhD, but I think as of yesterday has finished. So an extra round of applause. Alicia's poetry has appeared in the Moth, the Colorado Review, the Berkeley Poetry Review and Banshee, among others, and her poem Surface Audience was nominated for the Pushcart and Best of the Net prizes.
In the brand new silence, I am being sown to the sea, the sting of the jab, a bright column buoying me up. I both feel and don't feel that anticipated mesh, a room full of people my exact age, like school. Clothes go fluorescent in shadow like this, a clutch of glows. Someone's lemon pale halter top, white sneakers crossed under a chair. The heat waves end postponed each time I check my phone. In a previous precious endlessness, plum trees bordered the house, seemed a reminder, a careful hand digging the beds. The barn would make the roadside a fiction. I would never walk beyond the rusting trough. Water spiders rushed its teal silk. There's a way things light up sometimes. The roof tiles were a sear of sun and shallows, seemed to take flight. I am back here, painless, only waiting for a cloud cover to roll in. This is a poem called Egg. I keep a list of coincidences in my phone, like I can cloud the glow of rarities, try to make the threat leap out of an object via its flattest side. Reconnection, a thing tea-lit, a tiny eye in the smoke-dark bulb of a keepsake, the startle of ceramic. Maybe this is why people draw, fix the luminous where it curls and shivers. For the time being, I am just concerned with igneous weights and the issue of their settling. Earlier, Rib propped the dune of the couch, this very expectant apartment. A cold dart of a thing underfoot, a whole solidness waning. I thought, this will be something very unpleasant. This will be a stilled pour or blade, but it was only a capo bird-like. I often try to make them snap sleek, but they are always crotchety and disappointing. Stiff hand, I imagine rain in your image, metal weights on rooftops, hammering everything smooth. This is called Sunset Synonym. The room absorbing a solstice, I dream unknown swathes, moth or breath, noon dimmed by leaves. The room full of boxes in the dark, A path becomes cobweb, migraine swollen with dirty white. I spend this introduction furrowed. The room, a moment reaching warmth, we extend infinitely. Starts, starlings flit, granular ahead, our vision sharp as beaks. The room, yet more fizzled things, settling into a truth, a shallow hum of cells. I think of the rift as glossy, new. The room, all I want, a whirl of rest, linen scented. I measure nightfall by the boiler's rush, our pause is woven, a good place to curl. The room, a blistered rise, kettle noise fixing us in a tightness. I can't go about my business in the morning's held gaze. The room records our stances, the sigh where luminescence tilts, here at the sink like clock hands, here at the sinking cloistered. And this is a poem called Sapendale. I feel like I have the fact in my head that that's the family of fruit that an orange is in, but now I no longer believe that or think I've made it up. But anyway, I slice an interruption in the side of this room. I have forgotten to turn off the main light, calm the island of its wire-ridged skin. Now it meets sun here at the meekest part of the ceiling, where two peach-slivered saturations coil. There is only one letter between water and waver, everything lit from the wrong place. If you saw this nervous palm from a distance, shook from the rooms around it, unstacking would sway you. Into a terrible bluntness, a swoon, it could be any time of year right now. The orange you left on my bedside table is missing a river of rind. I think my way into several underpinnings, the fibrous paper of midday and the place where veins cling. The ripped parts look like sea foam, and I always forget stage fainting is all too easy. Knees hinged to speak recline as mermaids on rocks. Just gonna do two more small ones. I hope I'm okay for time, but do let me know if I'm not. Cool. This is called MVARI Soundscape Listening Room, and it is, those websites that allow you to listen to what the noise at the very bottom of the sea sounds like. It's like people put a microphone, a hydrophone, I believe, down onto the ocean floor, and there are websites devoted to kind of hearing what the bottom of the sea sounds like, and this was recommended to me in the course of a writing workshop, and it was very cool. When we resubmerge ourselves, the silence has developed layers, flint-hard facets. Our darkness falls away, and this could be wind-blown grass, bird chatter. I try to remember how water is meant to be pressing around us. I try to remember water at all. It's been so long since I've let a seaside expand itself in my chest. I give the noise a stubborn overground shape, wildflower crushed valleys. This trill could be sonar, could be violins, could be my own ears, pink light inflated insides, could be sun-bleached dog toys in the garden, could be cadmium yellow, could be spring lengthening across us through the windows, but we are still entrenched. How do I narrate when the recording has dropped away, the sea and I blinking shut? And that's the thing I really got about those sound recordings. It's kind of, there's a very illusory quality to them. You kind of imagine them to be somewhere above ground. It literally sounds like a field recording of a microphone that somebody has left in an actual field. And you have to keep reminding yourself oh wait, this is a track of the noise at the bottom of the sea. It was just a very odd experience, especially in lockdown where you're thinking about all the places that you aren't. So this is my last poem called Algae. I never know. In my dream, where the rack swathed us, we had just left somewhere pebble dashed and brassy with heat inside, spark lit hearth full of tiny breakages. I remember a splinter catching in wool, bare floorboards, clutches of beer bottles in the door's shadow. Last night I held the unthinkable, planned my way through all the disasters I could. When embers make a shower, sometimes a word retains itself within a closed eyelid. Here, hush, flora, scum, eye, soot, granite, heave. Acceptance, a footprint filling slowly with silt. Me loving wholly, even as fronds slip between us and an immensity opens in my left ear, the one that always pops. It's been sand-whirled until now this winter. It's been real, hair in salted twists, blood sharp, and the next sliver of strand you visit will be gifted an autumn love russet and abounding. Thank you all very much.
Last up, fresh off the Belfast train, Wendy Erskine hardly needs an introduction, but I'll do a brief one anyway. Her first collection, Sweet Home, was published by The Stinging Fly in 2018 and Picador in 2019. Her new one, Dance Move, is out in February, which is incredibly exciting. I don't think it's an understatement to say that Wendy is one of the great practitioners of the short story of this century.
I'm going to read you a little bit from a story called Golem. Ages ago, I met somebody who was having a sort of an illicit relationship with a person, and they were saying, oh, they're just the type of person I can't stand. They're really snobby. They're so into themselves. They think they're great. And I was saying, well, why are you with them then? And they were saying, oh, well, I'm just basically proving to them that they're not all that because they're with me. And it got me thinking about the relationship between class and desire and passion and all these sorts of things. So that's what this story is about. There's two sisters, Eloise and Rhonda, and they've got husbands, and it is Eloise's birthday party, and Rhonda and her husband Marty have gone across to England for the party. And thanks to Danny and thanks to Declan for working on this story with me. This is just before the party. But when she went, the man at the front spent eons talking about the features of classic liberalism. It was all quite impenetrable. Eloise decided to shift to art, where she made a clay model of a frog, filled a notebook with charcoal drawings and made a time-lapse film of strawberries rotting. The teacher came round one day and said that she needed to figure out what she wanted to say and what was important to her. The teacher lifted the photo of a drain pipe that Eloise had taken. Is this important to you? She asked. Not really. It's just a drain pipe. But I want you to consider what's important to you, she added gently. What would that be? I don't know, Eloise said. All sorts of things. Like what? I don't know. It was only when she was driving home that she realised what her answer should have been. Mimi, my daughter, is important. Mimi. On the way to the airport, Marty had been saying that he still couldn't understand why they were staying in a hotel. Because, Marty, Rhonda said, did Eloise and Edgar stay with us when they came over to Belfast? No, they didn't, and so staying with them on this trip was just never going to be in the cards. But when they came over, we never asked them to stay with us. Of course we didn't, because where would they have slept? Could you imagine those two in an inflatable mattress on the living room floor? Hardly think so. Okay, so even though they asked us to stay, because let's face it, if they have fucking rooms galore, we have to say no, because they didn't stay with us even though we never asked them to. Yeah, you got it, she said. Even though it's going to cost us the guts of 300 quid. Yeah, you got it. Money well spent then. Rhonda affected a serenity. You know what, Marty? It's actually not going to cost us anything because it's costing me. I am paying for the hotel with my money, and because I am paying for the hotel with my money, why don't you just shush? There was silence until they got to the short stay car park. Taking the bags from the boot, Marty said, I would have to point out, Rhonda, in all fairness, that it's not really your money anyway, it's Noreen's. Was Noreen's. A solicitor, flakes round her mouth from eating a croissant or other pastry, had told her just how much she and Eloise had inherited when their mother died. It wasn't much. My money now, though, Marty. My money now. As they progressed through security, Rhonda dreamed of Edgar. Her mother, incontinent, dazed, aching, had even so refused to go into a home. Put me there and you'll kill me, she said. Is that what you want to do? So before and after work in the hospital, Rhonda tended to her. At the end of a shift, when they were as usual short-staffed, Rhonda just wanted to flop rather than start working new at her mother's. The home helps were useless. Don't expect me to light a fire, one of them said. All I could do was switch things on or off. Eloise sent care packages of hand creams and candles with complex scents. One time, she posted some chilled desserts. Rhonda got to Noreen's one evening, found her lying covered in blood. She'd fallen and hit her cheek on the grate. It needed 10 stitches through paper-thin skin. Rhonda phoned Eloise to tell her. Even though it was Edgar who answered, she provided full detail on how long they'd had to wait at the hospital, how it was bound to happen again, how it was all practically impossible, how it was unfair, that everything was left to her to do, how enough was enough was enough was enough. But Rhonda, he interrupted to say, Eloise and I could help. In fact, Eloise and I should help. We should be doing more. He said he would give her a phone call the next day, and he did, just as she was loading sodden sheets into the washing machine. He'd had a chat with Eloise, and if Rhonda thought it best that her mother should have full-time care in her own home, then they could certainly fund it. He would leave the exact arrangements up to her, but he wanted to give her his bank details. And so she started thinking about Edgar, a man who had only ever represented polite conversation, fucking her. It began when she awoke at 6 o'clock in the morning, thinking that she needed to get to her mother's freezing house. She had to light the fire and get her up out of bed, washed and dressed. Then she remembered. No, the carer would already be there. The duvet seemed softer, warmer, and the world was a more benevolent place. It wasn't money, though. Rhonda despised all that stuff where women went drippy over billionaires, submitting themselves to some guy's every whim because he had the dirty cash. Give me a shout when there's a film about a woman throwing it all away for a guy on the minimum wage, Rhonda would say. She phoned Edgar to express her thanks. He listened so carefully to all she had to say that she found herself telling him about her day at work, so it wasn't just the money. It was understanding. And in fact, you know what? Understanding was actually really, really hot. Thank you.
Thanks everybody again for coming. A last couple of thank yous. Thank you to Cal Doyle, a poetry editor, for yet another amazing collection of poems. Thank you to Sarah O'Rourke down the back, who just does everything, keeps us going. Thanks again to Declan, and thanks to Tom, who put together the sequence One Night Stands, which is a really special thing to do. And thanks again to all of you for coming.